Hey, Marcus. Yes, you, Marcus. Meneer Marcus Jooste. Hoe gaan dit? How's life? Dis lekker in South Africa, wouldn't you say?
What's he saying?
Saying South Africa is a beautiful country.
Isn't it just, Meneer Jooste? I mean, where else would someone like you, accused of such egregious, diabolical financial crimes, still be roaming the streets 3 full years after your alleged actions cost investors billions of rand in earnings and shook the very foundations of our financial system? Relax, mister. Before you ring up this posse of silks and attorneys you rolled into parliament with, I am not passing verdict on you, on your guilt or innocence. But I am saying that at the very least, you should have by now stood in front of a judge in a matter coined along the lines of state versus Marcus Jooste and others. If there was any sense of justice about these things, you should have at least had to stand before a magistrate or a judge to apply for bail by now. Had the dishonor of being offered transportation in one of our police vans, or more likely in your case, the inconvenience and yes, shame, if you have a sense of shame, of pulling up to the Stellenbosch police station in a luxury sedan before paying bail, which wouldn't be a problem for you anyway, no matter how many zeros come after the first digit of that bail amount. By now, one would have thought we would have seen your assets being preserved with a view to seizing them, as well as a vortex of civil litigation to get you to hashtag pay back the money. But no, this is the Republic of South Africa. We don't roll like that. Here, if you are a white-collar criminal of a particular socio-economic standing, the kid gloves really come out. For perspective, the charges against Marcus Jooste were first laid in January 2018.
We are in a position to announce that last night, the chairman of the Audit Committee reported transgressions to the authorities in terms of the Prevention of Combating of Corrupt Practices Act 2004, referred to as PRECA. Based on our investigations to date, we have reported the former CEO, Marcus Jooste, to the Hawks in terms of Section 34(1)(b) of PRECA on suspicion that he has committed offences thereunder.
And by March last year, with the benefit of the PwC forensic report, the current Steinhoff leadership were more than comfortable identifying you, Mr. Jooste, Dirk Schreiber, Ben Lechrantse, and Stefan Grobler as prime suspects in the grand scheme to cook the books at Steinhoff. And yet here we are, 2 years later. There is no state versus Marcus Jooste and others before any court in this country. So this picture then is just a work of our fiction for now. Also, arguably, the daydreams of those South Africans that believe that even in a society riddled with moral decadence, wrongdoers must still pay for their crimes. But for now, no sign at all that it will be reality anytime soon.
When will Mr. Jooste be arrested? I want to state it emphatically that we as a group are cooperating with authorities within South Africa. Ultimately, please appreciate, though, that it is not for the company to institute criminal proceedings against individuals.
This kind of privilege must be nice, being more equal than others. And it's not like we're talking about petty theft here, pickpocketing someone of 50 rand on Small Street in Johannesburg. We are talking billions of rand in losses for investors, big and small, from billionaires who can afford to dust it off and remain standing, to institutions that invest to raise money for thousands of retired civil servants.
The fact is, if you analyze the latest accounts, but even those that were released a month or two ago, it's quite clear that people can almost describe Steinhoff as a massive commercial fraudulent conspiracy, because the figures would indicate that, there was very little in the Steinhoff that I sold my companies into, in contradiction of the published audited accounts.
The amounts that are involved are quite significant, and there's no doubt about that. Talking about 20 or 18, 20 billion, those are not small amounts of money.
So what are we missing here? We have a crime of fraud on a grand scale. We have identifiable and identified suspects. We have prima facie evidence, presumably with actual people who can testify to the rigors of their investigations. We have actual victims of this scheme. Cases have been opened and undertakings made that they'll be investigated. So where's the holdup? It makes it hard to argue against those who say these kinds of crimes show the role of privilege in how the criminal justice system deals with cases. It's hard to argue against those who say Mr. Jooste and his co-accused, his would-be co-accused, are not spending hours daily sitting on hard benches in the dock in a high court purely because they are wealthy men of a particular hue and socio-economic standing. And my goodness, does our justice system walk on eggshells against people who fit that profile. Here's the point. Our professed onslaught against corruption and financial crimes will continue to ring hollow for as long as there are people in society who appear to be untouchables, be it in the public sector, political leadership, or indeed white-collar criminals. And this is not about feeding the monster of whataboutism that seeks to divert attention from the looting of public coffers. This is important and necessary work because unchecked, corruption anywhere pollutes the entire governance ecosystem. Those who cook the books and steal from their shareholders create a culture in which private sector bidders consider it the norm to budget for bribes for officials to gain public sector contracts and even budget for fines from regulators when they are caught out for corruption. With that said, welcome to this week's Corruption Scorecard, and our story focus this week, Steinhoff.